Hi, it's Mike Ryan. I want to talk today about making the analogy between a startup and parenting. I happen to be a parent of, as we speak in 2014, of a soon to be 26-year-old, 22-year-old, and a 9-year-old. And when I think about a startup and how there's comparison there, especially if you've never had a startup before, but you've been a parent, and what are some of the lessons learned there? And over the past 25 plus years as a parent and having kids that have different personality, I can make some of the analogy I was just thinking about as far as parenting in a startup. And when you have or even before you have a child, you're really thinking about, what it would be like to be a parent, probably in your early 20s, 30s, or 40s. And then, what would it be like to, take the plunge? And so when you do that as a parent, obviously there's a lot of things you have to go through, as well as when you have a startup and really preparing yourself mentally for that before the birth of a child, before the birth of a startup, and going through that process. And then once you have taken the plunge or have the birth of a child or having the launch of the startup, going through that process as a parent, you learn that it takes a lot of time and effort, probably for the first year. People say you're not going to be able to sleep for a year and probably longer. I don't know if you ever totally sleep once you have children. You worry about other people in your lives or another human being or two or three or whatever. But really, having a startup begin, you really are devoting yourself almost, as I say, 28, 36 hours a day in that. So if you think you're going to take a vacation by having a startup and not working for a big corporation or a small corporation, it really is all consuming, at least 8 or 10 days a week, 36-hour days, always on with both a startup and a child. And as you make the comparison, or I make the comparison between a child and a startup, you're really watching over that child very closely. For the first few months, they can't, walk, they can't articulate how they feel. And so, you're helping them develop their own language as a human being, as well as a startup. And you're feeding them, and you're constantly taking and watching carefully over them. Same with the startup. Uh, you also clean up a few messes on a daily basis, several times a day, and that is also probably very comparison to a startup, without getting into the grim details. So really, just making an analogy between parenting, and if you've never been a parent, and you have the opportunity to, it's a greatest feeling you ever have, and that was probably true with having a company. If you've never had a company before, if you've had that leap from not having a child and then having a child, I think it's a quantum leap. I think it's something that yeah, it's hard to articulate to other people. And whether those are, your own biological children or adopted children, I think having that responsibility for another human being is the greatest feeling that you can have. The same token, probably the second greatest feeling you can have is to create something also, and have a legacy of a company that you have built from scratch. And so just wanted to share with you some of my thoughts as far as parenting and starting up. There are some lots of similarities. I'll probably talk about that later sometime, but we'll talk to you soon. Have a great 2014 as it begins. You can obviously, this is dated this. Bye.